Oh.
Oh.
Hello there.
Hey.
How's everybody?
Good. We were just trying to figure out if we were in the wrong place.
No, you're in the right place. We're going to stay on Zoom until we meet. We're going to make sure that when we meet, everybody can get on Teams to do Microsoft Teams, whatever it's called. Meet. Now that's Google is Meet. Microsoft is Teams. But we got to make sure everybody can get on first because it's been a disaster, those that tried to just dive in.
I was just on Teams with the coaching session because we had a coaching session class at 6:30. And she used Teams and it came up fine for me. Daryl was there as well. He said that he clicked on one link and it wouldn't work, but then he clicked on another one and that did work.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of got to, you kind of need to be in the room. That's what the idea is going to be, is we're going to sit in the room, make sure everybody can get on. They've also had a problem with the recordings, can't find them. I had to help one today find his recording. He swore it wasn't there last night, but I was able to find it later today. But yeah, we're working through the bugs. But since we're meeting in Charlotte, next weekend? That's one of the first things that we'll do is we'll all get our laptops out and make sure that we can get in, and we'll use that, and then we'll make the conversion over from Zoom over to Teams. I've already got it set up, got all the dates set, the invitations, all that stuff's ready to go. Just got to make sure everybody can get on. All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Let me share my screen and see who's on the lineup tonight. All right. All right. So Zoom class 2, we've got Janiqua, Angela, and Jonathan. Looks like Janiqua is here. All right, Janiqua, are you ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is EDLS 734, Human Resources class. And so tonight we start our outlines of our chapters in our 2 textbooks. This is the Glickman book tonight, and Janiqua Barnes has got chapters 1 through 3. And so I will stop my share. Janiqua, if you need to share or if you just need to talk, you go right ahead. There we go.
I think I just shared my screen. So I was assigned chapters 1 through 3 in the text, and the first chapter was essentially about an emphasis on how school supervision is not just about building a collaborative and supportive environment that promotes effective teaching and learning. So its focus was on how supervision has basically evolved from a top-down model approach to a more collegial model where teacher input is valued in order to foster a positive school culture. So the author Glickman basically explains that the shift of allowing teachers to take on roles like teacher leader within the school allows for a more distributed leadership model where the teachers feel like they're valued and their input is important. And overall, the chapter explains that successful supervision involves providing like specific tasks like building a positive school culture, supporting teacher development, and focusing on student achievement, basically using the input from teachers because it helps to improve the culture of the school. The reflective exercise from this chapter was basically, and I feel like actually this was brought up in our last class. Somebody did. I don't know who, but I feel like we talked about this specific scenario, but it was about the superintendent not wanting or wanting the new school principal to focus on improving test scores when the new school principal really wanted to pay attention to how they were committed to the staff. But basically, the dilemma was the principal trying to balance the collegial supervision with the need to pay attention to what the superintendent was wanting him or her to do. And then the plan to respond that I came up with was paying attention to strategies like targeted interventions, data-driven instruction, and maintaining communication with teachers in order to keep the long-term goal of a collegial culture in sight, because overall that was what the principal wanted to do. And they could do that even while addressing all of the immediate challenges that the superintendent wanted to be addressed. So that was the gist of chapter 1.
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's trying to. If we look at what Janiqua has on the right-hand side of the screen, if I gave you those bullets and ask you what that is the definition of, what would you tell me that those 1, 2, 3, 4 dashes are bullets under propose a plan that incorporates both directive supervision and collaborative elements? If I said, summarize for me what those 4 bullets describe, what would you say that those 4 bullets describe?
The principal's plan for attacking the testing need that the superintendent wanted.
Yeah,
as far as
but tell me what that's the definition of. That's the definition of a PLC, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Isn't that on the screen? Isn't that the definition of a professional learning community? Use data. Aren't they data driven?
They are.
Don't they share instructional strategies? Isn't that once a week? Aren't they supposed to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And do a collaborative that group learning model that Linda Darling Hammond would talk about in professional development? Don't we consider that small group model PLCs? Frequent classroom observations, aren't they supposed to do that? Maintain open communication with their teachers. So my point here, or I hope my point here is, I don't see that there's a conflict here unless we want there to be a conflict here. If we use our PLCs correctly, and that's the model of supervision that we have to understand that we need the most, is that we have effective PLCs and that we as leaders manage those PLCs. We can do both those things, commitment to collegial supervision and focus on improving test scores. Those aren't exclusive things if and only if we use that PLC model. Excellent. All right, moving on.
Okay, so chapter 2 was basically focusing on how, although there is definitely an apparent need for some changes to occur, there's this persistence of traditional school structures being utilized and not really paying attention to the growing evidence that there are more flexible approaches out there that could be more effective if utilized correctly. We all know that sorry, we all know that traditional schools typically operate with centralized authority, right? And in contrast to what was talked about in the first chapter, that type of authority is going to limit teacher autonomy and their innovation because they feel like they have to do the cookie cut things that are basically placed in their laps and demanded for them to do. So, of course, there's going to be resistance when you're talking about changing and doing things differently because the established practices that the teachers are used to, that are deeply rooted in their classrooms and their expectations, um, are reinforced by the drive to meet the expectations of leadership or even society, and then again to meet the expectations of passing those standardized tests and the accountability measures. So teachers are often tasked with I guess picking a side, and I think, as Dr. Lamb mentioned, that it doesn't have to be choosing a side, but I think sometimes it becomes a fear factor where they don't want to go against the grain and end up being wrong or end up failing if they do that. Basically, the chapter just talks about the understanding why the traditional way is in place, but also paying attention to the fact that there's more different options that can actually serve students and educators alike. And then the reflective exercise for this chapter um, talked about how using basically conducting a comprehensive assessment in order to understand the culture of the school environment is necessary, and doing so by basically gathering information from and perspectives from all of the stakeholders of the school, right? So the administration, the teachers, the students, and the families of the school, the parents outside of the school, would give you insight into what the strengths and weaknesses of the school are, what the areas of improvement are, and basically be able to create a more positive and effective work and learning environment for everybody involved. So here you see where there are certain things that in the reflective exercise it asks, what are some things that each stakeholder could do, or questions they could answer in order to gain that data, and what could be used from that data once you gather it. So that was the reflective exercise, just figuring out how to use the people in the building and the people who are involved with the students to determine how to make the learning environment better. And
All right,
then
before we move on to chapter 3, culture eats strategy for breakfast. We have to understand that in all organizations, schools included, culture eats strategy for breakfast as a snack. Culture determines your outcomes. You must create a culture of teaching and learning where everybody that's in the building is a champion for students, not for themselves, not for teachers. One of my stories is a lady that I work with. She's recently retired as principal in Charlotte Mecklenburg, and she works in a charter school. She's retired to the beach, or semi-retired to the beach. I met her when she was probably about 25 years old. She was a teacher at Albemarle Road Middle School, or junior high school, excuse me. We were still junior highs. And I was principal at Eastway, but my friend Walt was the principal there, and I met her. And everybody knew she was a star. She was just a dynamo, that she was destined for great things. And so she was put up for the principal fellows at UNC Charlotte. She went in and interviewed. Everybody thought it was a foregone conclusion. She was the best candidate from Charlotte. She didn't get it the first time. And we did a debrief with her about what could have gone wrong. Why didn't you get the principal fellowship? And, during, she kind of recounted the questions that she'd been asked and the answers that she'd given in the interview to get into the principal fellows program at UNC Charlotte. And she said, they asked me why I wanted to be a school administrator. And I gave them the right answer. I told them I wanted to be a champion for teachers. Ouch. That disqualifies you. Now, she got it the second time around because she understood by then school administrators and teachers are supposed to be champions for students, not one another or not for themselves. And so if you understand that, you understand that you must create a culture, an environment where kids are championed, they're treated well, that teachers are treated with respect and as professionals, and that they create the culture of teaching and learning, that's what we're there for every day. You can't do that with top-down leadership. You can't do that from leadership from the office. It has to be a groundswell. It must be organic. It must come from the teachers. It must come from their work. It must come up from the PLCs. That's the only way that you can create that kind of culture in a building, is it has to come from the teachers, the people who are delivering instruction. Now, when I say it's not a conflict, you can't ever, it's like I tell at the opening town hall for the MSA students. They're, the first night that they're on their journey to become school administrators. If you don't think test scores don't matter, that they don't accurately reflect what a kid knows, and that they don't matter, get out now. This is not the business for you. Our job as school administrators at the school or district level is to make a good number go up or a bad number go down, period. That's how we're evaluated. So we can never say, well, we're just going to focus on communication, collaboration, and everybody singing out of the same songbook. We can never ignore the outcomes. We never have that luxury. But there is a way to balance those if you understand we must empower teachers through PLCs to create that culture of teaching and learning in our building. All right, moving on to chapter 3. Thank you.
So chapter 3 basically talks about what the dynamic school looks like, and basically how it is a continuous evolution that helps to meet the needs of students, the students in the building, the staff, and the community around it. Basically, giving schools autonomy can make sure that they are flexible, that they are responsive to the needs of everybody involved, and then, of course, leading to those better outcomes in data testing and even just school culture and student growth. The dynamic school environment is going to thrive if everyone is involved in decision making, not just that top down approach. So, shared leadership and collaboration in the school is definitely vital. The chapter talks about how the PLCs are going to foster ongoing teacher development, which, of course, is key to their maintaining that type of school environment and growth within the school. And then the last reflective exercise for me was about a case for diversifying a school staff just to meet or match the student population. And in it, here I talked about finding basically community or local institutions that could support and provide insight and even access to people that they could actually find those diverse staff members in order to fill their staff and make sure that the students get to see people like them and get to engage with people like them when they come to school. and understanding how those different partnerships can help to make sure that you understand the need for diversity within your building. Having a DEI company or even some historically Black colleges or universities or even Hispanic serving institutions involved in that process can educate and provide resources for the school. And those were my chapters.
All right, thank you. You stop your share. All right. If you partnered with one of those organizations, what could potentially be the most impactful service that they could provide? And I'm going to give you the answer to that question. And this is going to sound completely stupid, but that's who I am. The most important thing that they could do would be substitute teachers. The biggest enemy of PLCs is taking teachers' planning time to cover other teachers' classes that are out. That's the biggest problem in schools today with us being able to fulfill the promise of PLCs. If you're a school principal right now and you're not out actively trying to figure out ways to get substitutes in your building so that when your people are out, other teachers can still, the PLCs can carry on. See, what we've done is we've said PLCs are important. They're the basis of our instructional supervision program, teacher leadership. Yay, yay, yay. But oh, by the way, you never get to take your planning time. It's not too important because we always got you plugged in covering classes because we're too lazy or incompetent to find substitutes. That's what we're talking about. I know substitutes that doesn't pay well, but you can find people if you want to. Why wouldn't we want to? This is I'm going to give you a little central office secret here. Would there be a reason why people in the central office might not want you to find substitutes? Can a teacher take an annual leave day when kids are in the building? No. They take sick days, right? Is the teacher charged for that day, even if you don't get a substitute? Yes. Where does that money go? If we don't have to pay anybody with it, where does it go? It goes to the general fund miscellaneous. What funds travel and conferences, always the best ones, of course, are in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, or New Orleans. Is there an allotment anywhere for central office travel? No. Where do you think those people come up with that money to travel to every conference all the time that they're never there, never pick up the phone? Where do you think that money comes from? It comes from unused substitute funds. I worked in a small Western North Carolina district as principal and eventually was assistant superintendent there before I went to Charlotte. And they would get mad at principals if they got substitutes and didn't make teachers cover classes. They didn't have any money to ride on. Superintendent being chief among them. He stayed in Biloxi, Mississippi, to the point when he got fired, that's where he went. Can't make that up. I wish that was one of the crazy stories that I tell that wasn't true, but unfortunately that one's true. They would get angry at principals and verbally reprimand you for hiring substitutes and using up that sub money. So don't think that we couldn't do better getting teacher subs if we wanted to. We just don't want to. And there's no impetus from the central office. Actually, it's in the reverse. All that unused sub money, that's theirs. And if we don't have teacher planning, the whole heart of our instructional program goes to the wayside if teachers can't plan and can't run their PLCs. It's just that simple. It's an operations issue. We know what to do. We just don't have the time to do it because teachers are covering classes. This is none of this stuff that Janiqua just went over in chapters 1 through 3 is news to any of us. It's been in the business for more than a minute. We know this. You got to empower teachers. We know culture matters. We know we need to be diverse. We need to, if you can see it, you can be it. We know all that stuff. We just can't do it because teachers are never free to do that because they're always covering classes. Sound familiar? And so your number one goal, if you're a school principal right now, that will aid your instructional program more than anything else that you could do, your supervision of instruction, is to make sure your teachers get their planning time. And then you can worry about what they're doing in those PLCs. There's no doubt that it's not happening if they're not having them. Because you know how it works. If a member of your PLC, your team is out, then the team's got to cover during the day. So that's another day lost. That's another day lost. I won't belabor the point. That's a good job, Janiqua. I appreciate you. Did a good job on that one. All right. Let's see. Are either of our other two here tonight, Angela or Jonathan?
Angela, I don't think is in the program anymore.
We think she's dropped. Has anybody heard from Jonathan? Let me look and see if I've gotten anything. No, I don't see anything from him either. All right. All right.
Well, Dr. Lamb, I'm always, willing to push my presentation back to give Jonathan an extra week to prepare for his.
All right. All right. Do we have anybody else that can go tonight or not? I've got a lesson ready if I always have a backup lesson. So if we don't have anybody, I want to do a quick Hertzberg lesson with you. It's kind of at the end of I'll be with you on Saturday. Next Saturday. And so I want to go ahead and introduce it now. Who knows who Frederick Hertzberg is or was, excuse me. He's one of your major theorists. His initial work came out in 1959. You say, God, that's not relevant. That's old as you are, Dale, just about. But he is the most relevant theorist in the school business today. Because what does he talk about? He talks about retention. He talks about satisfaction and dissatisfaction, job satisfaction, dissatisfaction. The things that make you stay and things that make you go. What's our biggest problem right now in the school business? Teacher retention. Our problem is we've forgotten or never learned the lessons of Hertzberg. Let me share my screen and let's get into this. I don't like reading PowerPoints or those kinds of things, but I will share my screen. And so if you look under our Saturday, all right, so here are the key takeaways. I like these because it summarizes them. Job satisfaction are two different ways, each with its own set of factors. So Hertzberg is referred to as Hertzberg's two-factor theory. His notion here is that satisfaction is not a continuum. It's two separate things. There are things that make you happy, things that make you sad, things that make you stay, and things that make you go. What he tries to get you to understand is that you can't, that they don't balance one another out. So, for example, you're a school principal. When I was a school principal, I was the swag. When I was a high school principal, I was the swag king. Shirts, polo shirts, t-shirts, warm-up suits, the whole 9 yards, the logo stuff. We had Price's Chicken Coop about once a month on Friday. Cost me a fortune. Bring donuts in on Fridays, that kind of thing. That's all on the positive side of Hertzberg. But here's the thing. Those don't cross over to the negative things that you do. So for a school administrator, bringing donuts on Friday morning does not make up for a 2-hour faculty meeting on Wednesday afternoon. Somehow we think it does. We think it's a checks and balance. It is not. They're separate. They're independent. They're two different factors. School administrators have forgotten that. We think that if we do the positive things, we'll give a little bonus or a little bit of supplement, and that'll make up for how badly we treat teachers, make them cover classes, don't get them substitutes, make them stay after for 2 hours of mind-numbing stupid faculty meetings or professional development that's not relevant to anything other than we paid a friend to do it kind of stuff. That does not balance out. It does not. We have forgotten those lessons. So a lot of our problems today in terms of teacher retention are because we have forgotten, which is the biggest personnel problem in school business today, is teacher retention, is because we have forgotten Hertzberg. So when y'all all do your dissertation, some of you will do will do something on teacher retention, or Hertzberg may be one of your theorists. And so when we get to chapter 5, and you've got a recommendation, you've collected data, you've analyzed your data, you've used validated instruments to produce reliable results, and from those you developed a set of recommendations going forward to address whatever problem that you were trying to solve. And that's how a dissertation starts, with statement of the problem. And you've got 10 recommendations of things that we can do to fix our problems on whatever that problem is that you've identified, a retention problem of some sort. I'm amazed at how many students go through the process and they turn me in their chapter 5 and it's 10 things that they need to either start doing or do more of. If there are 10 recommendations, I should see 5 and 5. I should see 5 things to do more of or could start doing, but I should see 5 things we need to stop doing today. That's what Hertzberg tells us. That one side, it's not a scale like Lady Justice that balances out. They don't balance. They just keep adding up until people leave. No amount of doing good stuff will make up for the bad stuff that you do. We have forgotten that lesson. If we ever learned it, we have forgotten it. Along with that are some other ideas. We can't do more with less. We can do less with less. That's a lie we tell teachers and demand more. And for everything, again, back to Hertzberg, for every new thing that we want to add, we've got to ask ourselves, what are we willing to give up? We can't do more with less. We can't just keep adding more and more things on. Because everything we add takes more time, takes time away from teachers. That means we got less time, we do less. So if you're going to add new responsibilities to teachers as a school administrator, what have you got to also be willing to do? Evaluate what you're doing now and say, all right, we're going to add this, but we're going to take this away. How many times have you seen that happen lately? Either. Generally, when more initiatives come rolling out, what do? We just add them onto the plate of what we've already got. That has to stop. Again, let me repeat that. That has to stop. We do less with less. We don't do more with less. It's not a scale. The bad stuff is not balanced out by the good stuff. And anytime we're making recommendations with Hertzberg as our theorist, or with retention in mind, which is all about job satisfaction, we need to see an equal number of things to do as not to do or stop doing. We need to see an equal number. That's the idea of Hertzberg. What you need to do is you need to dig in. I've got an article for you to get you started. You need to dig into that. Again, you say, well, Dale, why? Retention of teachers is the biggest problem we have personnel-wise today in schools. This is a personnel class. You need to learn to confront. Again, we're LS people. We don't just identify problems and whine about them. Our job as LS people is to identify problems and then fix them. We need to understand the underlying philosophy of the fix on teacher retention. The underlying philosophy is we do a lot of dumb stuff that run people off. We got to quit doing it. We can't effectively manage and run our PLCs because we've got teachers covering classes, because we have retention issues. So you see how it all fits together, but it all circles back to we need people in the building. We need our people in the building. And once we get them in there, I only know two things about school. This is my 46th year, professional year in the business. After 46 years in the business, I've only learned two things. If teachers and kids are in the room at the same time and they're engaged, you got a shot. I know the opposite of that. If teachers are missing or kids are missing, or if they're not engaged, you got no shot. We can't even get the basics done. Let me say that again. We can't even get the basics. We can't even get teachers and kids in the building at the same time now. Student attendance, all-time low percentage. Teacher attrition, all-time high. How do we expect to achieve if we don't have teachers or if the kids don't show up? That's our problem in a nutshell that we've got to solve. So by the end of this semester, hopefully you will have some ideas about what we've got to be able to do, that we can't just continue to do things like the district that I'm in tonight. I'm at the little house tonight. I'm not at the big house. I'm in a small Western county tonight. The superintendent here, now quote me directly, I did not say he was a pinhead. I said he could wear a thimble for a hat. His proposal on teachers is that they will take an old building and renovate it and make apartments to rent to people, and they will come by the droves and want to be teachers in this county. That might be the second dumbest thing I've ever heard from any superintendent, myself included. The dumbest I ever heard was years ago in Charlotte when I was the principal there. And the superintendent said, we're taking all your remediation from high school. We're going to put it into the pre-K program. And by the time that those kids get to high school, they'll all be on grade level. I can't make that up. I'm not smart enough. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And the second dumbest I've ever heard is we'll take this old building built in 1926. It's a fire hazard. We'll renovate it, spend millions of dollars, make sure that local people steal at least half of that money, and that we'll have these apartments to rent to people, and they'll come in droves to live in this county where there's not even a decent restaurant to eat. I was at a store here locally, and somebody saw me the other day that I kind of knew tangentially. And I don't know how the conversation got around to my work clothes, of all things, but they said, where do you get your clothes pressed? Said, you know, the last laundry in this county closed down. There's not even a laundry here to get your dress clothes pressed. There's one grocery store, and it's not very good. There's no bars, restaurants. There's no nightlife of any kind that might attract. There's no live music. There's no, I don't know what young people like, but I don't believe we got it, whatever it is. I mean, you know, I just stay here because, you know, I'm from here. And of course now, truth be told, I'm here at the resort. There is a resort in the northern part of the county. I stay here at the country club. But outside the country club, how many beginning teachers can afford to live at the country club? That'd be none. And so the thing is you built these apartments, most of the money would be stolen. Do you think that young people would want to come here to live? Well, of course not. One of the students that's in the program that's a couple of classes ahead of you, I met her, I don't know, Courtney's 36 or 7 years old. I met her when she had just learned to walk when I met her. 35 years ago. I've known her all of her life. She was my MSA student. I supervised her internship in Charlotte. She moved back home here. She just moved out of the county. I told her, you got to go. You know, she said, you know, there's nothing here for me or my husband. He's not from around here. And, you know, this is, you know, we've got to get someplace that, you know, where we can raise a family. She said, I feel bad about leaving home, leaving here. I mean, you know, I came back, you know, to try to be a part of the solution. I said, but you can't do it on your own. And the people you're working for, you know, again, are pinheads. And so young people, I mean, she's mid-late 30s and there's nothing here. Could you imagine a 22-year-old? What would they do in this county? It's not, there's plenty of affordable housing here now, but people don't want to come here. So again, we're ignoring the problem, or we're pretending that these solutions that are financial windfall for somebody, some politico, are going to fix our problem. They're not. If you really want to bring people here, the working conditions that they face in schools every day, you've got to stop operating schools, as Janiqua said, top down like it's the 1950s or 60s again. If you want to keep young professional people here, then you've got to do better on that part. Now, where they work, you can't fix that, but you could do some things. You could organize a lot of things to make it better for the young people here. But building apartments is not one of them. That line of thinking is the same as back in the 90s when everybody got on the bandwagon of, when you do when a principal puts together their school improvement plan, if your school exceeds the district or the state average on out of school suspensions, you have to do an addendum safety plan to your school improvement plan. I was supervising principals at the time in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. I was in the central office, and I'd go out and I'd ask, all right, what are you going to put in you've exceeded your limits. What are you going to put in your school safety plan? And I had principals that were dumb enough. Thankfully, I didn't hire them. I did fire some of them, though, that said to me, oh, we're going to make them wear uniforms. That's just kids behaving badly dressed similarly. That's not a solution to their behavior problem, is you're going to make them dress alike. That just makes them worse. that just makes their behavior worse. Then you got to deal with dress code violations all day, every day. You know, I never forget going over to the spa. There was a girl over there. She couldn't have been more than 100 pounds, and her pants would have been big on me. What do you do with something like that? I mean, you know, it became a bigger problem than it was. It was not a solution, and it was another problem. School uniforms, building apartments is just another problem. It doesn't address the issue of what people have to deal with, where they have to live, and what they have to deal with every day. And so you need to understand Hertzberg, and it will help clarify for you what the real personnel issues are in this state that we face in public education. If you understand Hertzberg theory, read that one and read some more about him, about what are the satisfiers. He called them motivators and hygienes. They're basically satisfiers and dissatisfiers. You need to look at those lists and understand, how does that apply to leadership in public schools in terms at the school level and at the district level? How do those theories apply? And if you understand those, you understand that the majority of things that we're trying to do in this state for teacher retention are a waste of time. What is the state's initiative, the state initiative for teacher retention? Who knows in North Carolina? Anybody know what our initiative is for teacher retention? It's called the Teacher Working Conditions Survey. Have you ever heard of it? Know what it is? You've seen it? We can Google it. Did you know that that is our state's initiative for teacher retention? That's the sole purpose of the Teacher Working Conditions Survey, is teacher retention. Did you even know that? Does it work? Do we want it to work? Why do we do it then? 1966, I was in school. And before you say anything, yes, I'm that old. I was in school in 1966. And I remember when we integrated schools. So in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education said separate was not equal. It reversed Plessy versus Ferguson of 1896 and said that we were to integrate schools with all deliberate haste. What did we do for 11 years until 1965? From 1954 to 1965, what did we do? Absolutely nothing. What happened in 1965? Civil Rights Act was passed. And so what happened in 1966? We started integrating schools. The bigots in the legislature in Raleigh immediately got out of building schools, left it to the local districts to have to fund capital, which is letting bonds, building buildings, and maintaining buildings. That money has to come from your county commissioners. State does not buy buildings. Well, how was that? They were bigots. Well, if you had 200-300 kids schools, a black one and a white one, and you had to integrate them, you didn't have a place to put 600 kids. And how did you slow integration down? No money coming from the state to build any buildings. You had to do that locally and tax yourself. How many folks wanted to do that? About none. So we started integrating school in 66, against our will, not really wanting to, struggling to do that. At the same time in 1966, to help us, thank goodness, the first Elementary and Secondary Education Act was passed, ESSA, ESSA, 1966. The federal government passed that to try to help us. That's where all of our titles came from, titles 1 through 9. All that Title I money to help with low wealth and kids, help to educate them, to take some of the burden off the local so they could do what? Buy buildings, integrate schools. It also provided some money to build some buildings, by the way. I taught at a high school with the science building where I taught was built that started in 1966 with that money from ESSA. Finished it in 1968. That's where I taught school, in the science building. That was built by federal money from ESSA. what was, there were several legal challenges to it all the way from 66 to 72, but it survived. The good guys won. It survived. When was it updated? When was Elementary and Secondary Act updated? Anybody know what year? 2001. We didn't call it ESA anymore, but it was the update to ESA. We called it No Child Left Behind. The not so good guys got a hold of it. What did they say? Kids shouldn't have to go to low performing schools, punish people in the buildings that had low performing kids. Kids shouldn't have to go to persistently dangerous, put in that measure. But to the point of the argument tonight is they required every state to put in a teacher retention program. Federal government did. Because if you can't keep teachers, how can you get folks to highly qualified if you can't keep them through the initial licensure phase? So every state in the union, public school, is required to have a teacher retention program that's identifiable, not just some platitudes written down, that you actually got to do something. So what does North Carolina do for teacher retention? Oh, ESSA was updated again, in 2016. Now we call it Every Child Succeeds Act, same acronym. That's what that is. But so what do we do for teacher retention in North Carolina? Well, very simple. We do teacher working condition survey. Now you say, well, Dale, how do you know? We don't care if it works or not, or we're only doing it. If we cared if it worked or not, A, we would do it more than every other year, and B, where would we see it calculated, and where would it matter? On the state report card. Do you see teacher working condition survey on state report card? You see everything else on there, don't you, that matters? How can it matter if it's not on the report card? We see proficiency on the report card. We see growth on there. We see teacher quality. We see all the test scores. We see everything in the world. Do you see a peep about teacher working condition survey or teacher retention on the state report card? That would be no. So our statewide initiative, it looks good. We got a nice looking website that works really well. We can pull up all these scores and they've got them disaggregated. And then what do we do with that information? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter. Do you know of any principal that's ever been let go because of low TWC scores? No, you don't. It's not even on the principal's evaluation form, is it? Of course not. So do we really care about teacher retention? No, we don't. And most of the solutions that we have are idiotic, like uniforms, building apartments in an old abandoned school. That's what we're facing today, folks. That's why teacher retention is at an all-time low. Now, full disclosure, I'm old. Work-life balance is not a thing in my world. As a school administrator, a year and a half ago, I started with Jennifer Kroyman. She's principal in McDowell County. I did her dissertation. It was on 7 pillars of self-care, work-life balance. And I was like, I'll be glad to help you. I mean, I'm a methodologist. I can make anything work, but I just, quite honestly, I don't believe in this. It's not a thing. But it is a thing with young people. It can't be for school administrators. You got to be focused on outcomes, not input or not effort. Now, if you can get it done in a reasonable amount of time, that's fine. But we don't have the luxury of being focused on input, how much time we spend. We have to be focused on outputs, the outcomes of what we do. That's what, again, we have to make a good number go up or a bad number go down. We don't have the luxury of the old college try. He gave it his best. That doesn't matter. We have to be outcome focused. But teachers, especially those under 35, are all about work-life balance now. And that's why I said holding them 2 hours for a faculty meeting to exercise your ego on Wednesday as a principal cannot be made up for by bringing donuts later that week on Friday. It's not a balance. It's two factors. And so hopefully one of the things that we will do this semester is learn some of the behaviors that we need to do more of or start doing, but also some of the behaviors, identify those things that are the antithesis of retention that we've got to stop doing, and that we'll be able to identify actual genuine efforts that are theoretically sound to attract and retain teachers, and those that are just political shenanigans or just money grabs. Now, I know that's naive on my part, that if, you know, I'm not dumb enough to believe just because you know better, you'll do better. But I think you do need to know better, and you need to consciously, if you go along with and make some of these bad decisions, you at least need to acknowledge that you know that it's a bad decision. I mean, I always worry that especially emerging administrators are doing bad things or making bad decisions based on they don't know any better. I'm always hopeful that it's because they don't know any better, not that they know better and are doing it anyway, that they're malpracticing. You know, I prefer that it's misfeasance or nonfeasance rather than malfeasance. Misfeasance is, you know, you did the wrong thing, but you didn't know it was wrong. Or nonfeasance, you had a duty to act, you didn't know you were supposed to do it. But I'm beginning to believe a lot of it's actually malfeasance. You know better, but you're doing it anyway. But I at least want you to know better. I want you to know the good things to do and the bad things to do. That's the whole idea of personnel. And so when we get together next weekend, we're going to start with adult learning theory. And then we'll, hopefully by then you will be more versed in Hertzberg. And you'll be able to sit and maybe relate some personal experiences as we have a discussion on Saturday. Remember, Sunday's your day to present. Saturday's our days to have some discussions. And so hopefully you'll have looked into Hertzberg a little more by then, and Knowles and andragogy and some of those things, so that we can talk about some of the things that we see that we think work or don't work, and some of the things that we need to start seeing done in school if we're going to address our biggest issue, which of course is with teacher retention. All right, anybody else have anything for the good of the group? I see my time is up. I try to stay on time. That's important on retention. I want to keep all y'all. We try to start on time, try to end on time. That's a biggie. That's a good habit to get into if you're going to be a school administrator. Don't impose on people's time. All right. So looking at our calendar, today is the 4th. I will see you again on Saturday, September 14th at 9 o'clock at the Charlotte campus. I normally bring some fruit and pastries and make coffee. Will that be okay? Now, if you want biscuits, you got to let me know. But I'm telling you, everybody's got healthy nowadays. Nobody likes biscuits anymore. I've even had to quit eating biscuits. They closed the coal plant over at Ellenborough, and they didn't have a place to weigh me. I got so big, so I had to lose some weight. I had to get off the biscuits. They were making me drive through over at the convenience center and weigh my truck, and then weigh me without it to figure out how much I weighed. And so I've had to get off the biscuits. But if you want biscuits, I can bring biscuits. For lunch, generally on that first Saturday, I turn you loose because I'm a lot to take for 3 hours. But after that, I'll buy you lunch, probably the middle week. Now, Sundays, we don't do lunch. I bring pastries and fruit, and we get out by 1 o'clock on Sunday. And you can catch, you know, it'll be ball game Sundays, and I try to get you out just as the game starts so that we can beat the traffic home, not be stuck in Charlotte till dark. So Saturday, I'll bring coffee, fruit, pastries, unless you want a biscuit. If you want a biscuit, just email. And then I'll let you go to lunch on Saturday. We'll come back. We'll finish up Sunday. We do fruit, pastries, coffee. I'll have you out no later than 1. And then on the middle Saturday, I'll buy lunch. Jason's Deli, I've got an account with them. We'll just do a Qualtrics order and send it in. We'll do that. All right. So everybody knows where we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be doing. I'll see you next on Saturday the 14th in Charlotte. Be sure to be there.
Hey, Dr. Lamb.
Yes.
I talked to Rebecca, and she said that her and Jonathan they got the days mixed up. So I'm sure that they'll kind of I guess let you know what happened with that. So I was just letting you know.
And I talked to Jonathan, and he said he was thinking class was tomorrow, but he had his presentation ready to go for the wrong day.
All right. Well, I don't have class tomorrow. I don't try to have y'all back-to-back nights so that if y'all got something going on in your life that you can miss one or the other. He can catch up next time. That's okay.
Yeah.
He said he was going to email you.
That's fine. Yeah, some weeks, no, I've only got a couple weeks where we have back-to-back nights on a Wednesday and Thursday. I try not to do that and just try to have one class a week for this. That way, because usually if you miss one night, you got to mix the next two. It's usually some issue. So that'll be fine. They can show up. They might can do that. We might can catch up. I might give them some of my time on Saturday. So I took some of my time tonight. I took theirs to cover Hertzberg. We may have some time on Saturday. So if they're ready to go on Saturday, we can do that. We can make sure they get their time in. Look.
Okay. And do we have anything due from tonight, or just when we give our presentation?
Just when you give your presentation, you saw what Janiqua did. She just uploads that. That's all she has to do. And again, if you want to do a PowerPoint, if you want to do an outline, just that you've got something. Y'all understand on online classes that you have to have a product for it to count as you being present. Just showing up on the screen does not count for attendance in an online class at Gardner Webb. Don't ask me why. I don't want to get into that. Again, don't ever put curriculum people in charge of anything. That's a bad idea. Now, before we go, full disclosure, y'all do know that I'm married to one of them EDCI ladies. Our next anniversary will be number 40. I was old enough to know better when I got married. I've been married to an EDCI lady for 40 years. I talk about them like awful, but I am married to one. I do love her, but just don't let them be in charge. That's just all that's my only advice to you. Just don't let them be in charge. They'll make 73 policies and rules and regulations rather than just going, that's kind of like you see it. We were talking last night with my EDCI bunch. I teach them on Tuesday nights. I've got an EDCI class. And one of the things that I talk to them about is if you got one person coming in late, don't put an announcement out. Don't put a notice up in the teacher's lounge. If you got a person coming in late, what do? You go down to their room and you have a discussion about why they're coming in late. You don't punish the many for the sins of the few, and you don't pass another policy. You don't put out another bulletin or another memo or send another group email. If you got a person that's coming in late, you go down and tell them you need to come to work on time. That's important. And so I love those people, but again, somehow it's got twisted at Gardner Webb that you got to have a product to show attendance. Okay. So I said, if you got something written on a hand note, take a picture of it on your phone and upload it. I don't care. As long as there's something in there that we can say that you were here and that you did your assignment. That's what that's about. I want to hear what you know. You got to be able to command a room. You got to be able to command the faculty. You got to be able to command the central office group. You've got to be able to convey your ideas without reading it. I mean, if you have to read it, then you don't know it well enough to lead it. That's the way that works. That's just like when all of you come to your final defense. Oh, you're going to hate me. You're going to hate me because I'm going to meet you at the door of your final defense. It's on campus, in person on campus, and I'm going to frisk you just like a prisoner. I'm going to take your notes off of you, your tablets, your pads, your phones, and I'm going to make you stand there. You're going to have a PowerPoint up. It's only going to have just big ideas on it. That's all it's going to have, and you're going to have to be able to speak to that. If you can't do that, you can't lead a school staff, or you can't lead a central office staff if you can't talk extemporaneously, just from verbal cues of big ideas. You got to learn that skill if you want to be a leader. I don't make the rules. That's just how it works. You know, you've got to be able to do that. That's what I'm trying. You know, we're trying to make that conversion now, where you can speak without having to read it or be prompted. So I said I hate to read PowerPoints. That shows a lack of intelligence, or lack of preparation, or both in my case. You weren't prepared. And if you're not prepared, how can you lead people? People have to have confidence in you that you know what you're doing. That may be the most important thing in leadership, is that people can see, they can see in you that they can follow you, and that you can get them there. You know, when we talk about interviewing for your first administrative job, I mean, the whole idea is we got to be able to project that you are a responsible person. And you've heard the story before. You can't be like Barney. The first season of Andy Griffith's show, when Andy went to Raleigh and we put Barney, his deputy, in charge, what did Barney do? Deputized Otis the town drunk and gave Gomer a gun. I mean, we got to trust in you. People have got to be able to see that leadership in you before they're going to give you those positions. And if you can't lead a room, if you can't lead people, if you can't speak extemporaneously, if you can't share your knowledge and ideas without having to read it, we can't project you. We're not going to hire you, not for a leadership role, especially not in the central office. Especially not in the central office. All right. Anybody have anything else for the good of the group? I'm looking forward to Saturday week in Charlotte. I'll stay at the big house. I get to stay at the big house on that weekend. I live Lake Norman, just north of town, between there and Statesville. So I get to stay at the big house that week. So I really enjoy Saturday classes in Charlotte. And I will see you all then. Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate you.